Welcome to Gates of Transformation, a platform for transformational leaders, visionaries, and everyday people standing at the threshold of change. In a time when our world is being reshaped by the second and nations appearing to be in turmoil, people of all nations are in desperate need of leadership.
The markers or the identifiers I talked about, the four that determine the eligibility of a leader, are connected to a leader's identity. Who the leader is. Those are the four markers, the four identifiers. Who the leader is, character, personality. And then the 7 qualities are what they bring to the table as a leader. So whether we are talking about identifiers or we are talking about qualities, these cannot be determined by a CV or years of experience. That's what I talked about tenure. Tenure is just a compliment. Experience is a compliment. But the key is ability, capability, and skill. Those are the keys. You can have all the education in the world, acquire all the degrees, travel to every nation under the earth, attend every conference that has ever been organized, have notebooks and a store full of notes and information about leadership. That still will not make you a transformational leader. That still will not make you an effective watchman. The effective leader, the leader who brings transformation to people, the leader who leads with impact, the leader who leaves a positive legacy, is the leader who has the ability, the capability, and the skill. And all those 3 are learned. You have to learn them. Leadership is a gift. Everybody is born with the gift of leadership. Everybody is born with a gift of influence. We are all influencers. We are all leaders. However, the people who invest in developing themselves, the people who invest in learning and growing, developing their skill in leadership and influence, they become the ultimate leaders and the ultimate influencers. There are influencers and there are ultimate influencers. There are leaders and there are impactful leaders. There are leaders and there are transformers. And you can tell the difference by what they are willing to learn and what skill or ability they are willing to develop in them. We cannot just tell that by a CV. For a CV, it just helps us to see where this person has been. But a CV is not a proof of what this person has produced in the places where they have been. We cannot see the fruit that someone's leadership produces from their CV or their tenure in a particular institution. We can only see the fruit by the track record. Where have you been? What have you done? Whom have you transformed? What have you contributed? Before you came to this position, what value did you add to your nation and to your society? These are the questions we need to be asking. You know, that sounded like a lot, what I just said. It sounded like a lot. And I know for some of you listening to me right now, you're even thinking, oh my goodness, you're maybe looking at the leadership in your nation, the people at the gates of influence in your nation, and you are even asking yourself, will we ever be able to get these types of leaders in our nation? Will we ever be able to get there? The answer is yes, you can. You can. These types of citizens that I'm describing are everywhere. But sometimes they are not found in the political parties or among the loyalists. That's the truth. They are everyday citizens who understand how things work. And because of their understanding, sometimes they're not in the crowd. They are busy working. They are at a gate that no one has even assigned them, but they have come to the place of realization that as a leader, this is the gate that I have been equipped to lead, and they have taken the initiative to lead in that gate. They're not waiting for an appointment. They're not waiting for an election. They're not waiting for a nomination. They're not waiting to be hired. They are going to go to that interview with a proven track record of what they've been doing. I chuckle every time I hear people make leadership sound like you have to be in the seat to do something. No, leadership is every day and everywhere. You lead before you get to the seat. It is actually what you do before you get to the seat that can actually bring you to the seat. That's how it should be. That's what should bring you to the seat. You that's listening to me right now, you that's wondering, will we ever reach there? You that's wondering, will we ever be able to experience this type of leadership? You that's thinking, will we ever be able to be partakers of the shift that's taking on globally, that's going on globally? I want you to know that transformation, even in your nation, is an everyday possibility, and it is a reality, but it is not accidental. Transformation is very intentional. It is not accidental. It only happens in nations and to people where their watchmen are carefully marked and they become leaders who are genuinely committed to building their society and their nation. That's how transformation is ushered in. I want you to take, for instance, the case of Rwanda. Following the 1994 Civil War, we were all, those of us who were alive then, who were born, and even those who are younger, I'm sure they've read about it. If you've gone to school and your curriculum is really focused on teaching you the history of your continent, the history of the world, and how to rebuild nations, then you would have studied and read about Rwanda. The unforgettable genocide that happened in the nation. The level of destruction was even unimaginable. The echo in the air of the BBC at that time, the BBC News, the reporters every morning giving accounts of what's been happening on the ground. And even in listening to it back then, next to my dad in the morning, next to the bed, listening to the BBC, I could feel the shocks of the electric shocks go through my body. It was very chilling. It wasn't only chilling that people were dying, but the images that were revealed. Many of those days I just felt numb, especially in the early hours of the morning, just to hear about the hundreds and thousands of people, of lives that were lost, and a country left in total shambles. It wasn't only the physical damages and the loss of life, but the chaos, the pain, the hurt, the brokenness, the confusion, and the destitution of the people that just consumed everyone that was alive at the time in the nation. It was so huge. It was so big. My young mind could not even comprehend it at the time. As a young high schooler then, I asked a lot of questions, because John Maxwell says that the greatest mistakes leaders make is not asking questions. We have to ask questions. There's a question behind every question, and leaders must ask questions. We cannot assume that we are doing it right. We cannot assume that we know the answers. We have to ask questions. So I asked my father a lot of questions at that time. And one of the most prominent questions I kept asking, will these people ever be able to rebuild an entire nation that is in complete ruins? My father even didn't believe that it could happen. He looked at me and he said, only God knows. So I did not think in a million years, not from the media, from what I found, from what I heard, and later in the years from what I researched, it didn't look like it was going to happen. Not even in a million years. But guess what? All things are possible in nations where the leaders are committed to rebuilding. I want someone to type that in the chat box. All things are possible in nations and to a people whose leaders are committed to the work of rebuilding. So fast forward 21 years later, and Rwanda has emerged as one of, if not the only giant of development in the entire continent of Africa. To some people, they are the only, because that's what they know. But they are among, or they may be the only nation that is a giant of development. Now you may wonder, just like I wondered when I saw everything turn around, I had to blink my eyes fast and I was like, what happened? How did it happen? How did it happen? So you may be wondering, how did they do it? How were they able to pick themselves up from the ashes of destruction and rise to the height of healing? Not only building the nation, not only reconstructing government houses and reconstructing roads and schools. Not only did they build the infrastructure, rebuild the infrastructure, but how was Rwanda able to rise to the height of healing, to the height of reconciliation, and being able to move ahead and be a united people that are continuously building their nation and their society? Of course, many factors will have contributed, and I'll get to that in just a moment. Many factors played a role in Rwanda's revival. But the chief of all the factors can be found in two words: transformational leadership. Transformational leadership is the only way to rebuild a nation that is broken down culturally, broken down. The family walls are broken. The culture have lost their value. They have lost their flavor. A lot of things have gone wrong. People have left, the leaders have lost their true north. The only way to rebuild such a nation is through transformational leadership. Yes, this is not leadership in any place. It's leadership at the highest pinnacle of the nation. That's where it begins. It's very obvious that the nation may have benefited from, the help of giant international agencies. We know that the World Bank may have given a lot, and it's not may, they have. And the IMF may have given, and the UN may have supported with all kinds of humanitarian aid that could go into the country. We know that individuals in nation, billionaires, their planes were flying in and out of Rwanda to deliver aid and food and clothing and resources. And we know that nations may have donated or given resources for them to rebuild. All of that happened. And it's true, aid is good, support is good, sponsorship is good, donations are good. But there is nothing better than the citizens of a nation identifying the right leaders that will lead the rebuilding, and the people rallying behind those leaders to bring their own resources, their own strength, their intellect, their ideas, their vision, their power, their authority, and bringing all of that, their commitment to their nation. Bringing all of that together to build a nation. So yes, everybody gave, but Rwandans equally played their part in the restoration process. One way they played their part effectively was by appointing and positioning the right watchmen at the strategic gates of the nation. You cannot have a nation in shambles and then have weak leaders, weak gatemen at the gate. You can't afford to do that. This was a time for Rwanda to go on a search, on a hunt, to fish out all the Rwandans that are capable and able and have the spirit of a watchman, to place them at the helm of affairs. Because in some nations today, where we have the leaders that are not committed, the watchmen that do not have the qualities and the spirit of a watchman, they would have even robbed from the aid and from the donation to build their own houses. They would have rebuilt their own house first before they will rebuild any other house in the nation. But when you have leaders who are committed to a nation, leaders who are committed to service, they put the people they lead first, and then they lead from behind, especially in times of crisis. They are physically present in the front row, in the leadership, in the strategizing. But when it comes to personal gain, they lead from behind. These leaders that were identified and appointed in Rwanda, they had the skills to create the reforms that were needed, to draft and rewrite the policies that were needed, to create a system and the processes that will facilitate the shift from darkness to light. And don't get me wrong, even today, I know that there might have been back then, and even today, there might still be some loopholes and flaws in the system of leadership in Rwanda or the entire system of the nation. Every nation has its flaws, but we cannot continue to hide behind excuses. Flaws cannot prevent us from reaching transformation. We can be perfecting the system as we move. So yes, there may be flaws today. Some of you may have visited Rwanda and maybe you experience some level of corruption. Maybe you have seen bribery going on here and there. Maybe you have had one or two Rwandans complain and say something negative about their nation. It does not matter. The point is that overall, when you look at the nation from a mountaintop view, not from the bottom of the valley, because the bottom of the valley is where people complain about issues. But at the mountaintop is where people execute solutions. So if you're looking at the nation from a mountaintop view, you will be able to see that these leaders have succeeded in cultivating in the hearts of people and in their minds the attitude of transformation, the attitude of solidarity, the attitude of let's move forward, let's build our nation together. So Rwanda has become, a model, and Rwanda is also evidence that a nation can indeed thrive in the hands of leaders who are willing to do whatever it takes to bring prosperity to the people. I keep emphasizing willing, because willingness comes from the heart. It does not come from the seat. It does not come from the position. It does not come from how you look. It does not come from what tenure you have in governance and that you have been in the system for so long. Willingness is a heart activity. When you have people who are willing from their heart to lead and to contribute to nation building, prosperity will become a reality. It proves what John Maxwell says, that everything, not some things, everything rises and falls on leadership. Everything, not some things, rises and falls. If it rises, it's as a result of leadership. If it falls, it's as a result of leadership. So what am I saying? What I am saying is that leadership is an important role. Leadership can get people out of slavery, or it can keep them deeper into bondage. It just depends on the type of leader that's leading the people. What John Maxwell said is plain truth. When the right person is set in a high place of leadership at the gates, and that person applies the responsibility in governing and dispensing the power that comes with their seat, then the whole body of the people benefit. So once again, when we talk about nation building, when we talk about rebuilding, when we talk about impact, when we talk about rising from defeat in a nation, it all starts at the gates with the correct gatekeepers. That's where it begins. We need to examine their performances, including the victories that they've won and the fruit yielded in their leadership. That is how we can determine where reform is needed. We have to have a way of measuring the impact, of measuring the transformation, of measuring the improvements and the development that's taking place. We cannot always have leaders come up with new ideas. Every time they open their mouth, there's a new idea. We have to be able to talk about where we are going and how far we've gotten. And that can only happen when the right leaders are in the right seat. As I close today, I want to remind us that it is time for people to understand, who understand the gates of influence, that these are not only positions, these are not only institutions, but people who understand that these are pillars that are used to erect the power and the possibility of transformation in a nation, then those are the people we should give the keys to. These pillars must be, like I stated in the past broadcast, and if you haven't watched it, I invite you to pause right here, go to the broadcast that's titled Gates, Portals of Transformation in a Nation. If you watch it, you'll be able to flow with me. If you're just joining in, you are just connecting with me today, thank you for being here. I invite you to go back and watch the other broadcast so you can see where we are coming from and be able to understand where we are going. And also do not forget to subscribe to the channel, to like the videos, comment, engage with me through conversation. I'm a communicator. I like to dialogue. I like to see how I'm doing. I like to understand how people are receiving from me. So share feedback, comment, and share with someone. If you're the only one hearing this, you're not doing justice to your community, to your society, to your institution, to your nation. Share this video. Let it go far and wide, because every day, every hour, every minute, every second, nations are going through appointing and reappointing, electing and re-electing, nominating and renominating, and actually hiring and all of that of leaders. Every day we have leaders occupy their shifts in government all the time. And every time we move this leader to this area, we are just granting no access to somebody. We're just giving the keys to another gate to somebody. We need to know who this person is. What's their track record? You can't go from health and just crisscross all the way to the family gate. You may be an expert in the field of health. You may be one that can manage the health gate very well, but you are not well versed in how to manage the family gates, in what kind of programs should be allowed in the nation that will transform the family in a positive way, and deny access to programs that come with a lot of money, come with funding, but will destroy the fabric of the family. We need the right people at the gates. Some nations are really toying with the destinies of the people in their nations, because the seeds that are planted today will become the fruit that will be reaped tomorrow. So we need the right leaders at the right gates, and we need the leaders that will give the right access and deny access to the wrong things that are coming in the nation. So like I have said before, these 7 gates are supposed to be focus areas in every manifesto. So for those nations that are going through elections, about to go to elections, these need to be the focus center point for every manifesto and for all the national development plans and even the Constitution. We need to incorporate leadership of these 7 gates in those important documents, and we need to execute them. So I want to leave you today with 2 pertinent questions. Questions I want you to meditate on, I want you to think about, I want you to ponder on. Question number 1 is, what are the qualities of the leaders at the gates of influence in your nation? What are their qualities? Do they possess the 7 qualities I featured earlier, that are featured from my book, Influence 2, Legacy Beyond the Grave? Or do they possess other qualities that are leading the nation astray? The second question is, are these watchmen at the gates of your nation? Are they watchmen that can usher in transformation for the entire populace? Or are they watchmen that are only ushering in transformation for themselves? And while you're pondering on your response, again, I want to remind you to help me grow this network by clicking the subscribe button, and also do share with someone, do comment, and do like. Until I come your way again, thank you very much and have a great day. See you next time.